Thanks Surfshark for sponsoring this video. There are so many dysfunctional families in anime that one starts to wonder, is it part of a hidden contract sitting somewhere between a creepy comic relief character and a tournament arc? I get it, this is a relatable topic, so many authors tap into that, yet unlike Horikoshi, they rarely go that deep. Hello comrade, my name is Bachis. Come, get yourself a beverage and sit down with me. We got some families to break down. Before we do that though, let's establish something for the purposes of this discussion. Dysfunctional doesn't mean incomplete. Deku's household technically has a father, practically not really. Still, it's hard to call his family situation terrible. Bakugos are not considered either, as they're just more intense and are otherwise loving, caring parents in a traditional sense. That's the important distinction, because Silva and Kikyo are also loving, but in a very twisted way, tailored towards raising assassins rather than functional members of society. This is the dysfunctionality we're talking about. Controlling behavior, abuse, schemes or betrayals, all that not so good stuff. Hanma family, Britannian and Imperial family, Daigo clan, Reyes, I swear you can find one in every other anime. Although very few go beyond writing a surface-level hostile environment and actually develop the complex inner workings of said families, let alone solve them. Todorokis are rather unique in a way that there is a clear progression of everyone involved, which leads to a satisfying, definitive conclusion that keeps it together without everyone lived happily ever after. To do so, the author uses previously written stories as a framework to improve upon, and the inspiration is pretty obvious. The Fire Nation royal family, which I'll use as a medium to comment on all the other crazy homes. The similarities are so striking, it's essentially the same people. But this is totally fine, as Stanley Kubrick once said, everything has already been done, every story has been told, every scene has been shot. It's our job to do it better. The question is whether MHA does it better, and the answer is yes overall, not in every scenario. Because, let's be honest, Shoto has nothing on Zuko. Maybe reconciling with his mom being part of the main story, and even then it's shaky. Doesn't mean that the former lacks merits of his own. Sure, he misses out on a whole villain subplot, but it gives us a chance to see a more everyday version of this character. He's just a kid who has a father projecting his failures, forcing him to become something he doesn't necessarily want to be. You see that left, right and center, with Asian parents getting a whole stereotype of "Are you doctor yet?" Endeavor just cranks it up to 11, and while Zuko takes a good minute to oppose his father, Icy Hot does it from the get-go. Has to live with it too, literally, which is a fumble by Horikoshi, as we weren't shown what was going on between them all those years after Rei's admission to the ward. This is interesting, because there is the same gap in Atla, yet we know that the Fire Lord raised his child in relative peace, save for neglect, exiling his mom, and the whole Scar thing. Although the princess quote of "my father hasn't come here since our family was actually happy and that was a long time ago" implies that after Ursa went missing, it all deteriorated fast. The similarities don't stop here. They both had this one goal they were fixated on, which then did a complete 360. Not 180, look. Zuko went from capture the Avatar to kill the Avatar to join the Avatar to do what's right. And Shoto went from become a hero without Endeavor's quirk to use fire, to use both, to use it his own way. In the end, they pretty much did what they were initially going for, but for completely different reasons. Zuko captured the Avatar for the whole world, not his dad, and Shoto became a hero using his quirk, not his dad's. The big difference here is the aftermath of the entire family, and MHA does go the extra mile of keeping it together somewhat. Throughout the story, Five Weenies gradually mended his relationship with his father, first by accepting Endeavor as a great hero, then by seeing him change of duty, and finally, with all the sacrifices Enji had to make, he reached a level of reconciliation that is still below forgiveness, but at least now they've accepted each other. Ozai doesn't get any of that. He had neither redeeming qualities nor some kind of realization moment, so he was imprisoned for the rest of his life. Unfortunately, not every bad actor gets caught in time, and while free, they might be trying to access your personal information even as we speak. That's why I use Surfshark VPN, who kindly sponsored this video. It stands for Virtual Private Network, whose sole purpose is to improve your internet experience by keeping your online identity away from prying eyes and adding a few other bells and whistles. For instance, I'm about to leave the country soon to go see my family, and these two functions will be essential for my travels. First and foremost, it's the safety. Since I'll have to use the airport and other public Wi-Fis to manage my YouTube, I'm opening myself up to a lot of cyber dangers. Surfshark will encrypt my connection so my personal data stays protected, plus their clean web feature blocks ads, trackers and other malicious links, which makes browsing way smoother. The second is a quality of life. Surfshark has more than 4,500 servers in 140 locations, so if a show or content isn't available where I am, I can just connect back to my country and unlock it. On my phone too, on all my devices actually, as there is no limit. If you want to stay secure and be able to change your digital location with a click of a mouse, go to surfshark.com/mahistv or use code mahistv at checkout to get 4 extra months of Surfshark VPN. Now we make a 180, because Firelord has nothing on the Fire Daddy. I can come up with maybe one thing, and it's basically just aura of building up this monstrosity, who injured and exiled his son, corrupted the Fire Nation even further, was about to finish the 100-year war in the worst way possible, yet when we actually get to see him, Ozai is surprisingly calm, collected, even seems to be proud of Zuko's return. It was a very nice subversion, which then hit us with a 1-2 punch of showing his menacing side during the finale. That's about it. He has nothing else going for him other than the evil last boss energy many cardboard villains have. Paparoki, on the other hand, is far more complex. They do share the bare bones of prioritizing the strongest child and mistreating a spouse, with the differences beginning as early as their backstory. Endeavor kinda went the opposite direction of Kota, as after getting the reality check, he decided to become the #1 hero out of spite instead of completely abandoning the idea. That was working for a bit, but the second reality check of "there is always a bigger fish" didn't do him any favors and transformed his obsession into creating the strongest hero. He simply didn't want people to suffer due to heroes failing, a totally commendable goal. It's just that he chose one of the worst ways to get there, resulting in becoming what he swore to destroy. As opposed to that, Lord Phoenix was like All For One, born an ass into a family of power-hungry warmongers, which happened to be the ruling family of a nation in the middle of a century-long war. With all the political bullshit and intrigues that happen in these circles, he was destined to be a villain right from the start, with very little chance of developing into someone good. Enji had that goodness in him, as there's no denying his heroic deeds, which means that on a fundamental level, the Flame Hero had infinitely more opportunities to grow. At this point you might be thinking, alright, I see where this is going. Zuko Shoto, Ozai Endeavor, Azula Dabi, Ursa Rei, but who is Uncle Iroh? Well, you're looking at him. This sounds crazy, but he is a combination of two royal brothers, as he gets the setup of the youngest and the development of the oldest. Let me remind you that our beloved tea enjoyer was from the same Fire Lord lineage and led the invasion of Ba Sing Se, joking that he will take it soon, if not burn it to the ground, of course. He was a good father, no doubt, also way more empathetic than Ozai, open to gaining knowledge from various sources, and in general, was a better human being. However, he was still in charge of this war machine, which caused unimaginable horrors to the world, and it took his son dying for Iroh to start asking himself, who am I and what do I want? Todorokis Sr. didn't quite follow in his footsteps, he had spare children after all, but it would be incorrect to say that Toya's passing didn't affect him. He was at a crossroads, change his ways or double down, and sadly, this wasn't even a question. Because put yourself in his shoes for a moment, you have this great goal you've worked towards for years, in pursuit of which you literally killed your child. Are you going to abandon it? No, since that would mean Toya died for nothing. It took that, All Might retiring and dangerous villains appearing, for Endeavor to start to question, who am I and what do I want? Just like Iroh, he went to seek learning from different sources, and if not for meta liberation, I believe he would have improved over time, maybe even made up with his family better. Remember, he might not have the wisdom of the ages yet, but he is definitely above triple-digit IQ, as he was probably the best mentor Deku ever had. He actually told him what to focus on, unlike Gran Torino, who was more of a trial by fire type instructor, which is a little ironic. The war though accelerated this process dramatically, and just like with any cutting corners, this also came with severe drawbacks. Discovering that his son is alive and now part of the most evil villains messed him up real good, and since he just began feeling guilt for everything he's done, it was so bad he couldn't bring himself to fight Dabi and once again had to put Shoto on the spot of succeeding where he failed. Not that he wasn't doing anything, he had other fish to fry, but due to his weak mental state, All For One was able to use his trademark Shit Talk no Jutsu and bring him closer to All Might by giving them a matching wound. Not a problem. He used this moment to realize that the only Todoroki he hasn't yet abused is him and went full circle to share everyone's pain by sacrificing himself to stop his son from cosplaying Fat Man. Lucky for him, all the work that this hellish family put in to solve their collective struggle paid off, and Toya was finally put to rest, mentally first, physically later, breaking the cycle of abuse and commencing Endeavor's lifelong journey of atonement. As you have already guessed, next is Azula and Dabi. I don't have a clear winner here, they're both great in their own regard. I love that there wasn't even an attempt to save the people bender from falling into genuine insanity, and that her world of perfection, success and being in control got absolutely crushed. Everyone left her behind. The closest friends straight up betrayed her, brother joined their generational enemies, and father, who she tried pleasing her entire life cause mom wasn't affectionate enough, fucked off to attempt to rule the world alone. Kinda feel bad for her, honestly. There was just no time to process it all, and with her personality of extremes, she just folded. Before that though, Azula was a menace. So good at being an adversary that you couldn't help but like her. Every time she appeared on screen, you knew there was going to be major trouble, and as opposed to team recurring villains, you could never guess whether she would succeed or not. I mean, yeah, she was taking more L's than W's, but that's exactly the point, as during the Ba Sing Se takeover, it turned Fire Nation faster than her cousin in his grave. Dabi is also an extremely capable villain. Same fire proficiency, same manipulation, same twisted mind. The difference is that Azula is the evil agent of order and he is the evil agent of chaos, so their goals and methods are pretty far apart. He just wants Endeavor to suffer for the misery he put him through, and if it takes setting the whole world ablaze, so be it. What's interesting is that his father tried to show care by telling him to stop going so hard as it was hurting his body, but Enji simply didn't have the skills to do that properly. His dad was a hero, probably away half the time, and mom was nowhere to be seen. No wonder he doesn't know how to parent. As a result, Toya became so obsessed with living up to his father's expectations that after he came back years later, he saw Shoto being treated the way he was and got mad at him for stealing his father's attention. You know you categorically screwed up when the biggest villain around says, "Damn Endeavor, you fucked up your kid so bad, I'm not messing with that shit." But there was another person responsible for his upbringing, and Rei is a much better character than Ursa. She wasn't Mom of the Year by any means, yet despite the abuse and later mental decline, she tried her best to protect kids from their father and even themselves in the case of Toya. She failed though, and totally misunderstood where her oldest was coming from. Instead of channeling his energy in a different direction and maybe explaining that although daddy is very intense, he loves you and doesn't want you to hurt yourself, Rei suggested not being a hero, which was basically like saying, go be a failure. It wasn't all bad. The other kids turned out fine thanks to her kindness, and Shoto in particular is an example of her improvement as a parent, since it was mom who encouraged him to be a hero and himself, which is why Deku's line about the quirk was so effective. Unfortunately, protecting children left little room for caring about her own issues, which led Rei to a boiling point. It was a great example of how abuse trickles down the chain to cause more abuse, even if it's unintentional. The psych ward was a much needed break, allowing her to recuperate, so that when Mama Schnee, so that when Mama Roki was needed the most, she came back to stand on business. I like how there was build up to this scene, where at first it was just Shoto coming over, then the other two followed, and we will learn that the root cause himself was consistently dropping off flowers for her. She didn't come out of nowhere. Horikoshi deliberately introduced her little by little, the same way Todorokis were introduced back to her. Fantastic writing, which is something I can't say about Ursa. Yes, we got the whole picture later with the search, which I don't think makes her look any better considering how she threw Zuko under the bus and mostly punished Azula, helping her adopt the monster impression. She just doesn't do anything in the Atla and seems totally oblivious to her children's relationship. Lastly, we have Fuyumi and Natsuo. I'm inclined to say that there are some parallels with Tai Lee and Mai, where these two are the optimists of the group trying to keep it together, and the others are the pessimists who disassociate, speaking their mind only when pressed. I understand if you don't see that or think it's an inadequate comparison, as they're not part of the same family and their abuse comes from different people. I'm just saying that they play a similar role in the narrative of showcasing other coping strategies. From this perspective, Todorokis are superior, since we see the end result of Fuyumi being happy that they're all on better terms now, and Natsuo mostly quenching his hate in favor of a cold, distant coexistence with Endeavor. To wrap this up, I want to show you one more point of comparison, this time with Naruto. It's about how the redemption is written. Enji Todoroki develops throughout the entire story, and we can clearly see each step of his journey as it happens, live so to speak. That's pretty damn rare, as other than Talk no Jutsu, we usually see this type of redemption through flashbacks. Itachi is the prime example of that, and they do share more similarities than it might initially seem. A bad member of the family has a goal they want a good member to achieve, and they use various forms of abuse to expedite the process. We then learn that the bad member lived a tragic life, secretly had a noble goal, and just happened to choose wildest methods of reaching it. Huge stretch, I agree, yet my point stands regardless. There is active and retroactive development. To each their own, you can like what you like, but I want to see the change happen gradually, not being told that actually he was a good guy all along and committed this vile shit because of big sad reasons. I love Itachi, but his story has too many what a twist moments like OP abilities and character defining revelations. That's why I think Endeavor has a better redemption arc than most anime characters. The reader doesn't change their opinion of him after one specific event. Instead, we see him going through a long process of understanding his wrongs and trying to rectify them as much as he can. The best part, he doesn't 100% succeed. The past will never disappear, and the damage he caused can never be undone, leaving Endeavor in a perpetual state of atonement as opposed to the usual absolute forgiveness. Same goes for the remaining Todorokis. We don't get a dysfunctional household just for the sake of adding depth to a few characters. No, that's what Toga's family is for. These guys are here to show that you can work things out and live a relatively normal life, which is a concept that is missing in a lot of similar stories. Ozai, Mahia's family counseling into the microphone. Don't forget to check out the Surfshark deal with the link in the description or pinned comment. Have a great whatever time of the day you have. Until next time, cheers.